You're listening to the Bulldog Hour, getting you inside the Wilson football program with weekly game previews, recaps, highlights, and interviews. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 4-6 of the Bulldog Hour. I am one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and sitting next to me is my co-host, Justin Raffoff.
Yeah, it's good to be here. You know, we've reached that point where we have actual football to discuss now. So
that is amazing.
It's a crazy time of year, isn't it?
It is, and even crazier when technical difficulties pop up, and I'm wondering, what does this error mean, and what does that mean, and why is this not working? But we got it all sorted out.
Throwback to like our other show,
right? Yeah,
a few years ago, where it was every week, something with Facebook, something with Flash, something with Ustream, something with Mixler. Like, yeah, we don't necessarily have that every week now. So like when it does, it's
Well, I mean, it's getting
a little extra excitement.
We're getting a little more sophisticated, so the logistics get a little tougher.
Yeah.
But when it works pretty well. When it works pretty well.
When it goes wrong, it can go horribly wrong.
But I mean, in case those of you, if you travel to the games and you don't stay at home hoping to find a feed, then you're missing out, because the game on Friday night while it was broadcast without sound, it was pointed out, it was broadcast on Facebook, 2 Twitter accounts, Ustream and Facebook. And YouTube.
Yeah.
So you could watch the Wilson Central Dauphin game on 5 different accounts across 4 different platforms. So basically, if you have social media or have one of the main websites booked, like YouTube, a lot of people go to that, you could stumble across the Wilson football game from Friday night. And, some things behind the scenes in the works, maybe making things a little bit different. I don't know. I can't comment on that. I don't have confirmation, but there will always be a game stream, whether it's me or someone else. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, here we are. Already the 6th episode of the 4th season. We've only played 1 game, but we're on the 6th episode. We're gunning for possibly 15 episodes this year.
Wow.
That would be a new benchmark. Our first year we only had 4 total.
I was going to say, that would blow the last few seasons, though, completely away. Even last year, we did a bunch of episodes.
Yeah, we got to, to 9?
I think. We were nowhere near
right
15.
Around 9?
Yeah,
yeah, so we're already at 6 here, and the plan is to be live again next week. So, yeah, if you like the show, hopefully you can at least tolerate us. But
otherwise, why would you keep
right, yeah, I don't think... I mean, we are going to have highlights, and there are slides where you don't have to see us. You usually have to hear us. But if you're just here for information, maybe you can mute us. I don't know. That's up to you
Fair
guys.
enough. That's a good point.
Yeah,
Don't tell us, though. Like, that's all right.
You can tell me. That's all right.
My
wife tells me she doesn't want to listen to me most of the time anyway.
Honestly, if you click and you have the stream running, I don't really care if you listen.
Right? It's all about those numbers.
That sounds terrible.
It's all about those numbers. So... yeah, well, we're here to recap a Wilson football game and preview the next one, since we're, it's only August 26th, and we're already talking about Game 2.
Yeah, it's kind of different for us. I know a lot of other areas have some kind of like extended family out in the Pittsburgh area, and they were talking about high school football out there. Like, this has been their start week for a while. The Whippeal has always kind of had that extra week in there,
right?
Whereas. That was not the case for most of Pennsylvania until the last couple of years, and then pretty much everyone was on board this year. This, by the way, I was listening to a podcast today about college football, and there were like 4 games yesterday, 4 Division I games yesterday.
All right.
Just like New Mexico State and like Wyoming, like games like that. But they called it Week 0 on the podcast.
Oh, they did.
They called it Week 0. Yeah, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is the conversation that has been going around. Obviously not a serious conversation.
Right.
Just something that gets talked about for us as well.
Yeah. Well, before we do that, let's take care of the housekeeping stuff, the announcements that we go through every week. We'll kind of be able to breeze through these now as we are on the 6th episode, so we're used to it. But we want to get the information out there for those watching and listening. And first up, we want to thank our sponsors. We couldn't do it without them. My dad and May's Sandwich Shop actually ended up sponsoring the stream for the game Friday night at Central Dauphin. So I thank them for that. I had mentioned it on Facebook and Twitter earlier. So again, thank you to May's Sandwich Shop for all they've done over these first 3 years of the show. Andy Herr, writer for EasternPAFootball.com, a Warwick alum, big basketball guy, but he stepped up and been covering football now for a few years, and he appreciates the Wilson program. We've gotten to know him. We've become close with him. Looking forward to seeing him again. It's been a few months since we got to talk to him. And Andy's a big supporter of the show, as is Wilson football alum Matt Cruz. And then we have two anonymous donors that, even though we can't point out their name because they told us they'd like to stay off the record, we are certainly thankful for what they've contributed to the show over the last couple of years. So again, if you would like to support us, there's many ways you can do so. Again, I mentioned we have sponsorship and advertising opportunities across the Bulldog Hour and Wilson football platforms that I operate. The live streams are a big one. I can send you numbers on what the streams got last year, and now with one under our belt, what we're getting this year, and that could be changing drastically soon, so we'll see what happens. But if you'd like to get on board there, that's a great opportunity to help out. The in-kind donations are always appreciated. Visiting the website is a big thing. BulldogHour.com isn't just about the podcast. It's kind of become a Wilson football site altogether. And then Justin's favorite part, spread the word.
Yeah, like and share, whether it's the posts that are coming out on Friday night or the tweets on Friday night or whether it's links to the videos or anything like that. The more you like and share, spread the word, the more that helps the show.
And again, we are having another live show next Sunday, September 2nd. If you can believe, we'll already be at Labor Day weekend.
Yeah. Heading into Game 3.
Heading into Game 3 already. So that'll be same time, same place, 8:30 p.m. You can find us on Facebook Live. And like I mentioned, if Facebook's not your thing, if you're listening to this as an audio podcast or watching it after the fact, we do broadcast this show and the game live streams on our Twitter accounts through Periscope, at Bulldog Hour or at Wilson Bulldogs, Facebook Live, YouTube, and also Ustream. So you can find us a whole variety of places, both this show and the Wilson football games on Friday evenings. Again, the fundraisers, doing the USB digital and the DVD game and season video sales. This is for the program directly. It's a great one because they've had these filmed for decades, and now we're monetizing it so that we can give back to the program. And they're available USB drives and DVDs. There's pricing for the DVDs up there. You can get all that information at BulldogHour.com and check out the merchandise tab. Quick look at the 2018 schedule as we chug right along. All those August dates almost completely gone. The final day of August is the game this weekend versus Governor Mifflin, which we're going to talk about tonight. And that entire left side is donezo.
Wow.
We're not technically a third of the way done, but, when you look at that meat of the schedule coming up.
We got our first column done.
Yeah, the first column will already be finished. So, once again, that is the updated schedule, including the change to the District 3 6A final, which will be a Friday evening in November. And, we always hope that Wilson is playing in that. And, there's plenty of weeks to fight for that spot. And the October 5th game, I highlight that once again. That is the Gridiron Classic, where Wilson is foregoing a game at Gursky to host the Hempfield Black Knights at First Energy Stadium in Reading on October 5th. That'll be an awesome event. If you don't have tickets yet, they are on sale, and you can get them from us at May's Sandwich Shop. We are selling the general admission tickets $5. That's all. There's $5 a ticket. You're going to want to buy them early because if you wait till game day, you're going to pay, I think it's $7 or $8 at the gate. So save yourself a few bucks and stop by May's Sandwich Shop. Yeah, and stop by, grab some food, get your game tickets, and you're all set. We do not have any more of the reserve seats. We've already sold out our reserve seat allotment. So if you want that, you're going to have to go to the box office or buy it online. But again, there's processing fees and things like that. So stop by May's Sandwich Shop and pick up your Gridiron Classic tickets from us. We got plenty to sell you, only $5 a piece.
Yeah. So, like you said, easy way to grab those, get them before, and you can skip the line when you get to the stadium.
Yeah, and
skip the line to buy your tickets.
Right. May's Sandwich Shop is a presenting sponsor. That is where we got our ticket allotment from. And the Bulldog Hour is a presenting sponsor of the football game as well. So you should see the May Sandwich Shop and Bulldog Hour logos throughout First Energy Stadium the night of the Gridiron Classic, just for the Wilson game. Not for all of them, just the Wilson game.
Yeah.
So that'll be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to that for sure. Another fundraiser, again, the game used jerseys. I've actually had someone pick up the posts this past week wanting jerseys, and I've sold a few to former players. I'm not going to name names, especially because they coach for a rival team now. But it was nice to talk with them again. And, these jerseys are available. I don't know if these specific ones are left anymore, but we have jerseys from the early 90s through 2011. And I actually have gotten a hold of some from the 70s and 80s, just not even a full handful. But those were scooped up by former players already. And I know they were happy to get those, especially because who would have thought that a jersey that's like 40 years old still existed, but I found it. and some people were able to find the proper people to get a hold of them. So if you're interested in that, again, bulldoghour.com, and check out the merchandise. Last thing, a little bit of a different one. We operated a pledge drive for the football team on Tuesday night. So if you are familiar with the program, if you're close to the program, you probably got a call or an email from a student or coach earlier this week. And we are soliciting those donations now. If you don't know what I'm talking about, feel free to offer a donation or a pledge to the program. Everything goes right to the program. This year they were raising funds for, I believe they wanted to get the entire squad new warm-ups, the travel suits, to go to the games. And they had a successful go at it last year, and we're trying something a little bit different this year. So if you looking to support the program, this is one way to do it. Again, you can do that at bulldoghour.com under merchandise. That's what that bottom link, the one that says bit.ly, that shortened link will take you to the donation page on bulldoghour.com. Or you can do it through PayPal. But we appreciate any support you can give to the program to help ease the burden of the players and coaches to raise the funds in other manners. So this is one quick and easy way to do so. Lastly, the Tradition Club event is coming up. We're just over a week away, really. Not quite 2 weeks away. It's happening on September 7th. The RSVP deadline has passed, but if you get it into us very soon, we'll still include you. Any members of the fall 1978, 1993, or 2008 teams will want to be at Gursky that night. You can hang out with fellow alumni, some former teammates and coaches, have some refreshments, get into the game for free if you were a player or coach, and then get recognized on the field at halftime as one of Wilson's 30-plus title teams. So we look forward to seeing a lot of those players back and during the second home game, Week 3, against Springford. All right, well, we have a football game to recap.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. I know, it's crazy to think here on August 26th.
Took us like into our 6th episode, but we have it now. We have a game to talk about.
We actually have a football game.
Yeah.
So we are talking about the Bulldogs game at Central Dauphin this past Friday, the 24th. We're up at Landis Field to take on the Rams in the 2018 season opener. And unfortunately for the Bulldogs, they did not come out on the end with the higher score, which that's usually the point of a football game, so I'm told.
That's what you're going for.
It's not a golf score. That was confusing to a couple of people I was talking about at the game, so I just want to clear that up. Yes, you are the team. You want to be the team scoring the most points. So unfortunately, that wasn't Wilson on Friday night. It happens,
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those things. We've discussed, and we discussed on previous episodes about the strength of the schedule, especially the non-league schedule, because that's something you control. Or I shouldn't say you control. You have more say over. You still have to find teams that are willing to play and that still benefit the program. And when you play Central Dauphin, you know that you run the risk of going up against a good, really, I say quality, I mean like a high quality opponent. And it's the last few years it's been not the opening week for Wilson, but this year because of some of the schedule changes, it ended up being the opening game. And that's a tough opener, and it proved to be that on Friday night. It looked like a first game, and Central Dauphin they were able to get some things going, and that kind of leads to the end result that we already talked about.
Yeah, obviously it's not the way you want to open a season.
Right.
You want to open with a victory, but when you schedule the way that Wilson has over the years, there are no cupcakes. This isn't the college teams that you talk about scheduling a bunch of FCS teams to line them up for a strong season. You have to walk a thin line when it comes to getting ready for the district playoffs.
Right. We've talked about this before. When you were, when we were in high school, when you were playing, and talking about how only 4 teams from Quad A at the time made it. A single loss could eliminate you from the playoffs.
Possibly, yeah.
Right.
There were 9-1,
with
8-2 teams
Wilson
that didn't make it.
The strength of the LL Section 1 at that point in time wouldn't necessarily do it, but there were Section 1 teams that didn't make it with one loss. But then you have, that's not the case for the playoff situation anymore. When you look at it, it's a really tough opponent for week 1, but you know what? You can learn more, have the potential. Whether or not that's done is obviously yet to be seen, but you can learn more out of playing tough competition, win or lose, than you do playing someone and just kind of having your way and then still not really learning anything about your team from that situation.
Right.
So that's all dependent on the response to that game. Again, win or lose. Whether if they would have won on Friday night and they don't learn anything from it, then you're still not really any better off. So
they've learned that.
Right. The response to Friday night is going to be the key to the next step to the season. Which
and
in high school football, thankfully, comes the next Friday.
And Coach Doms has said all the time that you don't see any better improvement usually than between week 1 and week 2.
Right.
And now this year Wilson's got the advantage, or is at least on even playing field, where there's the teams that they're playing this coming week, being Mifflin, hasn't already had the chance for that improvement.
And week 3, like last year, we played Mifflin in their second game, our first, and Springford in their third game, our second.
Right.
So
everyone's on that same same level right now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when Wilson and Mifflin meet. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and talk
plenty of time to talk
about the Central Dauphin game here and roll through some stuff. Let's do the highlights. Let's pull up the highlights here and talk a little bit about the game. So we got a Bulldog Hour recap here to get to. Let's see if I can pull it up here successfully. All right, there we go. All right, so no sound. You're going to have to hear us talk throughout this. It's about a 3.5, 4 minute video. So right off the bat, there was a couple nice plays, and again, these highlights don't necessarily mean everything is going to be peachy for Wilson. This is game highlights, things that happen, good or bad. Right. And one of the bad being on a repunt, Wilson fumbled the return, and that was their first significant turnover. Now, thankfully for them, it didn't end up hurting them, as the Central Dauphin kick was just a tad short. So Wilson's first turnover, no big issues. They're able to keep the score 0-0. Now we get a nice short out pass here to Matt Fry, who turns it into a 14-yard gain. A lot of the Wilson offense was short, intermediate passes,
which is typical of the Central Dauphin defense.
Right. But then a bad snap goes over the head of quarterback Anthony Futrick, getting his first start as a senior. And Central Dauphin eventually recovers it, I believe, just outside the 5-yard line.
Looks like it's about at the 6-yard line.
And Wilson's defense held. They were strong, and they nearly blocked the field goal, but it did go through the uprights to give Central Dauphin a 3-0 lead. On the ensuing kickoff, however, Elijah Morales, a senior, is going to field the kick about the 3-yard line, 3 or 4-yard line, and he's going to find a seam, and he's going to go all the way. It was a great answer. But if you just saw at the very bottom of the screen, and let's see if I can pause this and we can go back.
You saw it at the bottom of the screen.
There was a little bit of yellow that came into play.
Yeah. Little but important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a penalty on Wilson that actually negated the. Here we'll look at the main field goal. It'll be right after this, and you have to be looking near the end of the play to see it.
It'll be at the bottom of the screen.
You're not going to see the penalty. You're just going to see the flag fly through. Morales is going to be probably 20, 30 yards away. So watch, it's coming up. Watch the bottom of the screen. So look where Elijah is. He's on, what, the 35?
Yeah.
35?
Yeah.
There it was. Bottom right.
He's at
so,
the other 35.
So that had to be thrown at our 35, around there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's over now. It is what it is. So instead of Wilson have a chance to go up 7-3, they're left, with the ball back pretty deep.
Right.
So they start their drive.
They got a couple plays then that were moving in the right direction, which, it's tough to overcome those big penalties, but, that it kind of happens. And then
so we're still here in the now we're in the early second.
Yep.
Wilson punted. They're using a backup punter. Not a lot of big good punts from Wilson. Set up Central Dauphin with some good field position, but Wilson was able to end the threat there with a Matt Fry interception. So now we're in a few minutes later in the second, and
just another crazy
Wilson's got the ball stripped,
Yep.
and Central Dauphin is in the right place. They pick it up and take it for the score. After the extra point, Central Dauphin goes up 10-0. Now it looks like Wilson catches a break here as Noah Hoffman, the Central Dauphin quarterback, can't handle the snap. That it was a little high, but it wasn't over his head.
Right, I think, yeah.
But the Bulldogs get the ball. They start to feed Avanti a little. He gets a nice 10-yard run here.
That was a big run on 4th and 5, 4th and 6 that he was able to get.
You're thinking, all right before halftime here, maybe we can get something going. They're driving down the field. Now they're inside the 15. And then you have this play, which is another interesting play.
Yeah.
You see Futrick rolling out, and I know the filming people, man. I mean, you can't. It's hard to find good help nowadays.
It is. Also, there is a brief delay between when the camera has to go from the tripod to out the window.
So let's look at that again. I just want you to look at the receivers and where they're at in the end zone.
You'll be able to tell here.
So I'll stop it here. So here's Gilmore, and I believe there's another receiver up here because there's a defender.
Yes.
So there's two Wilson receivers between the goal line, at the end of the goal line, and the hash to the sideline. Futrick's rolling out. He doesn't see anyone open, so he decides to throw the ball away. Well, what ends up happening?
Out the side of the end zone.
What ends up happening is they call illegal grounding.
Yeah.
I was told that the line of scrimmage and pocket is not a rule in high school. There has to be a receiver in the area. But
I don't know.
To me, it looked like there was a receiver in the area,
Yeah.
so I'm very confused on this call.
I heard mixed messages too on Friday night. I had heard something about it had to go out the back of the end zone. Like I didn't hear this obviously from the official, so I don't know exactly what it was. So I don't know. It looked like there were certainly Wilson receivers in the area. Didn't work out that way, but you know what? It wasn't a turnover. Still,
right.
It put them behind the 8 ball. They were inside the 10, I think, or right close to the 10.
They were close to it, yeah.
Then they had. Basically, and you lose it down there, so now you're.
Well, it was 3rd and long, which I believe it was incomplete.
Yeah.
And so now they're facing 4th and long, and actually Anthony Futrick is able to roll out.
Yeah.
He decides to tuck it, and he has to get to, I think, the 4 or 5.
Yeah, I think he had to get to the 4,
maybe the 3
and he got
or
to
something
the 5,
like that. So he came up just
6.
short.
Yeah.
And
which
actually
led us to halftime.
The teams went into halftime, 10-0 Central Dauphin. Wilson's going to receive the second half kickoff. And unfortunately,
it's 10-0, but you think, you're sitting there thinking, well, the touchdown came on a ball that popped up to a defensive lineman who was on a dead run and ran into the end zone. And they had the ball twice because of fumbles.
Twice inside the 15
in the red zone, and only came away with 3 points.
Right.
The defense was doing
their job.
A pretty good job.
Yeah.
Like the defense had held them to 3 points when they started 2 drives in the red zone.
You were just thinking, if you take care of the ball, you reduce the turnovers, and the offense starts clicking, we'll be okay.
Right, we'll be all right.
But 10-0 could be way worse, but it could be better.
You still knew, and we talked about this a little bit at halftime. They need to get something going on offense. Sustained. And we talked about it before the game. You and I talked about it during the week. We talked about it on the drive up. We've talked about it with lots of people who have more influence with the team than us. But it's Central Dauphin. We talked about this. It's not an unfamiliar foe to Wilson. You know that their game plan is we're going to make you drive 12, 15 plays down the field without making a mistake.
Right. Can you be nearly perfect for 10-plus plays?
Right. And so, okay, even if you can do that once, that's 7 points. Can you do it 2, 3, maybe 4 times. We talked on last week's show when you showed the history of the scores here. I think only once or twice has the winning team made it over 28 points. It doesn't happen in this series a lot because both teams historically have solid defenses that are going to make you earn everything. Well, it just every time Wilson would be able to get something going, something would happen, and it wasn't necessarily the huge things like in the first half. It could be little things, and you know what? I think it just that adds up when you're playing a quality opponent. Those little things become big things, and that's kind of what led us to being on the wrong end on Friday night. But
Wilson
it happens.
Wasn't able to flip a switch. They didn't come out with the momentum they needed in the second half, and they received the kickoff. I believe they went 3 and out or close to it, punted, and Central Dauphin started to do what Central Dauphin does, and they wore Wilson down and were able to sustain drives, eat up the clock, and they eventually, I believe, took their first possession of the second half, and this was the touchdown right here to put them up 17-0. So now you're thinking, all right, now we're in a huge hole, and we haven't been able to show too much yet. So it's time to start doing some things. Short passing game still clicking. Morales gets a nice game on this one. And you're starting to think, okay, we need a score here. Unfortunately, this drive would end here on a future rollout, but is picked off on a nice diving catch by the Central Dauphin defender there. They would take that drive down the field and get another score. Their linebacker, fullback, senior Burkhart was a beast. They missed the extra point. So it was 23-0, but at that point they had the game in hand. The way Wilson's offense has been playing against the Rams' defense, you knew that no one was scoring 4 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns and 3 two-point conversions to win at this point in the game.
But at the same time, I am thinking, I'm like, look, while the outcome has been determined, not literally, but certainly figuratively and in all likelihood at that point, let's see what we're going to do, because you still had an offense that was still trying to get something clicking out there. Can they get something going?
Yeah.
And is it going to change the outcome of this game? No, but we already talked about this game, especially that first game, is a lot bigger than just that first game. It's about learning a lot about your football team, learning about the areas that maybe you're further ahead than you thought, maybe you're not as far as you thought.
How many guys are getting
right?
Their first game jitters and butterflies out.
Right.
How many of these guys are first-time starters? Or maybe they're in a new position.
So, I'm thinking, let's just find some success here. Let's find something that we can build on so that it's not like scrap this whole thing, nothing went our way. Let's get, even if it's the tiniest of things, I'm not trying to push, the moral victory here, because it wasn't that. But, let's get something to build on, because we had seen it. It's not like it was just a complete absence. They had things going. It's just they couldn't put it together. Let's see if we could put it together, anything at the end, and then get hopefully some momentum to head into the next week.
So Central Dauphin actually had gotten the ball again after that touchdown, and they did the respectful thing running the ball. They got stopped, I believe, on 4th down at the 1, didn't they?
Yeah. So the defense was showing, in my opinion, heart there.
They could have easily just been like, why does it matter?
Right.
But they didn't. They prevented Central Dauphin from scoring. Wilson got the ball and had to go 99 yards to prevent a shutout.
Yeah.
And Wilson and Coach Doms was staring his first ever shutout as coach in the face, because we're talking, about 90 seconds to play?
Yeah.
So there's like a minute and a half or so left. 99 yards to go to prevent a shutout. And it would have been the first Wilson shutout since Doms took over as head coach in 2006. And I have it on the stats page, so we'll get there to tell you the last time Wilson was shut out. You should know.
Ouch.
That should clue you in.
Ouch, man.
So, well, what did Wilson do? Well, now, again, and we'll point it out because I know there's some people that will be thinking it or probably writing it in the comments or letting us know via email that, yes, we're well aware that this was the Central Dauphin backup and second team guys.
Yeah.
We know that.
That's not the point,
That's not the point.
The point is, for a team that wasn't able to sustain things, right, to be able to go 99 yards and to finish it off, to get some points on the board, to not become that stat, right? To, just have something to build off of, to have something where you can look back and be like, hey, look, it was in no way what we need to, or in no way are we where we need to be, You know, we need to get better in every area, but you know, it gives you something. You know, so I was glad that they stuck it out there, that we didn't just, you know, kind of say, oh, well, you know, we'll just kind of run it, and if we get something, we get something. You know, like, no, we went for it too. I think that says a lot to the guys, you know, that the coaches, they weren't easing up. It was still go time for them.
Right.
And I think that's an important message for the coaches to send to the players in a situation like that. And so, like, I kind of like that they went after it and were able to get something, whether it's, and it could be for whatever motivation. I'm not making those calls. I don't know. It could be, well, we're not getting shut out. It could be, we need to keep these guys going. We see it. It's the first thing. We have a lot of areas we need to get better. Let's see if we can get better. You know what? It's a chance to run essentially a 2-minute offense. Can we run a 2-minute offense when we need to?
The answer is yes.
Yeah. So, like, those are all good things. And we get, like you said, was it against the ones? No. But we don't control that. You control what you do, and I was glad to see we were able to get something.
You could have had people walking around hanging their heads, you know, sucking air and just feeling sorry for themselves, but they didn't. You had the starters out there. They put together a 99-yard drive, and they capped it with this. And you're going to see senior quarterback Anthony Futrick. It's a great pass.
It's a great pass.
He threads the needle.
And he hit Nick Johnson a few times on that drive.
He did. So did it end the way we had wanted it to? Of course not. We wanted the victory.
But in isolation, we've already talked about this. We've got to move on now, right? Like, it was frustrating. It's over with. You know, we'll kind of discuss some of the numbers probably here in just a minute. But you know, we need to get better, and I think that having that success the last 90 seconds of the game gives you something to build on to moving forward to this week.
Right.
Because you're not going to win that game against Central Dauphin in 90 seconds at the end when you haven't been able to get there in the first, 45 minutes. But if you're able to kind of have that in place, you know what? Maybe that gives you something to build on going into this week against Mifflin.
Yeah.
Where it's still a clean slate.
Yep.
So.
All right, so some statistics here for you. Wilson actually had more first downs than Central Dauphin, 15-13. Couple that are going to stand out here, though. Wilson only gained 50 yards net rushing, whereas Central Dauphin was able to put up 175. Passing yards, Wilson eventually got to 191 to Central Dauphin's 91. It's bringing your total to pretty respectable and even 241 to 266. Not off that far, but CD had the edge there. Again, time of possession about the same too, 22-29 to 25-31. Not a huge discrepancy like we've seen in the past, but CD was able to get a lot of that in the second half. Third downs, not a great one. Wilson just 1 for 10 on third down. Central Dauphin was able to convert 4 of 13. Fourth down, Wilson was at 25%, 1 out of 4, where Central Dauphin got 1 of 3. And in the red zone, Wilson converted 1 out of 2 attempts, and Central Dauphin was able to get points on 2 out of 3 tries. The biggest takeaway, I think the key stat there is what Wilson's rushing game was able to do and really not do was their yards per carry was basically 2.
Yeah, that's not going to get it done.
No, and even if you take away, I think the sacks, it jumps up only to like 2.15 or something like that. It was very low, not where you needed to be. Central Dauphin's was up close to like I think 3.5 to 4 in that area. Not eye popping, right. But you multiply that by 4 downs and you're getting a first down.
Right, and we said when you look at when we were previewing Central Dauphin where they experienced front 7 on defense.
Oh yeah,
or front
and
8.
It showed, man, especially in that second half.
They were really
good. They were very, very talented. So, a lot of people were saying that this wasn't, the same old Central Dauphin team. We didn't know, they didn't know what they had this year. It was going to be another down year. They went 6-5 last year. Weren't happy about it, but they thought this could be more of the same. Well, that didn't look like more of the same to me.
Right. They're in a tough spot in that mid-pen.
Oh, yeah, but that division that league is tough.
Right. So you see that, and then you see some of the crossover games, like, what was it? One of the teams was playing Bishop McDevitt, I think, and Bishop McDevitt was just lighting them up, I think.
They played Cumberland Valley.
Yeah, and that's basically essentially like the Section 2. Or are they in that top? No, they're not in that top one.
No, Bishop McDevitt's not in the same. It's Commonwealth, Colonial, there's 4 levels. Yeah. I can't recall off the top of my head, but yeah. So the other thing that stood out to me for Wilson, the Bulldogs defense, where they looked really strong in the first half, they started to really bend and broke a little bit in the second half. But throughout the whole game, they didn't have a single tackle for loss or sack.
Yeah. And what kind of makes that tougher is, first of all, Central Dauphin's not going to throw deep a lot, which that happens for a sack. But the tackle for loss is, that you hope you see that on a team that's going to run so much. But also in the second half, they were just running and running and running. That adds to those yard totals that we talked about, but also that time of possession, and then also kind of wearing down the defense in week one there. So.
Right. So those are the team stats. A couple individual stats to point out. Senior quarterback Anthony Futrick making his first ever start, got a respectable stat line. Was able to really do well in that last drive of the game that we pointed out there. He went 21 of 33 for 191 yards. He had the touchdown, the one pick, and he was credited with 4 rushes for -5 yards. But he did have that big scramble, very close to picking up that first down there near the end of the first half. So, I know a lot of people were down on the quarterback play, but I think he's always the scapegoat. The quarterback position always becomes the scapegoat when the team struggles or loses.
It was a team effort on
for sure.
Friday night.
So I look forward to seeing Anthony at quarterback Friday night against Mifflin.
Absolutely.
Especially hopefully people listening to the show realize he had pretty efficient showing.
Yeah.
What they asked him to do, he was able to do it, and I'm sure he'd tell you he'd want that interception back.
Right.
Did he make the wrong read, or did he release it too late? Only he knows, but I'm sure they're talking about it tonight in film study.
Right. And like we said, you learn from it. In that situation next time, things work out differently, and hey, then the team's better for it. Like you said, I thought, across the board, they need to tighten things up. They need to get things going, both sides of the ball. But yeah, they had things in place, and when they got things going,
it was execution.
Well, we talked about it. It wasn't like it was ever just one thing. It was they'd get it going. It was like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back.
Yeah,
2 steps forward, 3 steps back.
Yep.
Everyone. So, it's hard. It's hard to get into a rhythm when the team is doing that.
It was self-inflicted mistakes and maybe a couple odd referee calls in the first half.
Yeah.
And then in the second half, it was overall play wasn't up to par.
Yeah.
Until that final drive. It's too bad they couldn't have something like that earlier to get their confidence going.
Right.
So we'll see how that carries forward. But the rest of the stats, Avante Lockhart, the junior running back, 10 rushes, 59 yards. He also had 3 tackles on defense. Senior running back Elijah Morales had 9 rushes for 37 yards. Sophomore receiver Troy Corson had 7 receptions for 41 yards, and he also had 8.5 tackles on defense. Senior tight end and linebacker Nick Johnson had 4 catches for 52 yards and the touchdown that we showed you, and he had 10 total tackles during the game. I believe junior Nate Hoekstra had 3 catches for 33 yards and 5 tackles from his outside linebacker spot. Senior inside linebacker Greg Smith, 9 tackles, and Matt Fry, we showed you his 1 reception for 14 yards. He also had 2 tackles from his secondary spot as well as the interception that you saw. So after a little bit of deliberation between the two of us, we settled on a player of the game that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone based on what we talked about last year and in the preseason, and that's going to be senior tight end linebacker Nick Johnson. He was a captain for this game. He had the lone touchdown, and he was a huge force on the defense. He was receiving a lot of different blockers come at him, and he was able to make 9 solo tackles and then 2 more assisted to give him, the way the math works in statistics, that's 10, because an assisted only counts as half.
0.5,
before people start saying, why were you saying 10 when it was 11? It was 9 plus 2 halves. So congratulations to Nick. He's our player of the game, and I'm sure he would tell us he would trade that for the victory any day of the week.
We both know he would just kind of like stare at us.
He would just be like, cool, thanks.
Yeah.
And that's not a negative against him. That's just he cares about stuff a little bit more important than player of the game awards.
Right.
So, but yeah, congratulations to Nick on a good play in the first game. And a couple of my pictures from the game in Harrisburg on Friday night. It's a lot of fun. I like taking the photos. and I think I caught a couple good ones, especially at the beginning when the lighting was a lot better. I look forward to continuing that on the Fridays to come. All right, so I think that pretty much wraps up our discussion of the Central Dauphin game.
Yeah.
So let's get to a quick preview of Wilson's second game here, technically, I guess, in Week 1, because we're on about that Week 0 stuff.
That's
So
right.
Game 2 in Week 1, we're going to host the Governor Mifflin Mustangs at Gursky Stadium this Friday night, August 31st, kick at 7 o'clock. So huge rivalry game. Wilson fell last year in Shillington, although the team made a valiant effort, attempted at a comeback, couldn't quite seal the deal, finish, and that was actually a theme early in the season where they'd get down and they just couldn't quite claw their way back. And it started with that Mifflin game, and we get to welcome the Mustangs to Gursky, and like a lot of them saying, let's get that trophy back, because it's the first time that Wilson has lost the Gursky Lynn Trophy since that started in 2012. So what are the big things about Mifflin in 2018? Well, the biggest news during the offseason was that head coach Vecchio was going to step down and retire, and a longtime assistant coach, I believe he's been with them for almost 3 decades, Jeff Lang, is filling in for him, which he did a few years ago when Coach Vecchio was on a medical leave. They had a super strong season under Coach Lang then. They lost to Wilson early, but rattled off, I think, like 10 wins in a row or something like that, or 9 wins in 10 games or something during that season. I was in 2016, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
Wilson beat up on Mifflin pretty good that first week, but then Mifflin turned in quite a performance over the next 10-plus weeks of the season. So even though Vecchio's gone, Mifflin's not going to miss a beat. Lang, like I said, he's been there almost, I think, 27 years. Jeff Lang has been with the Mustang football program, so don't expect too much different from Governor Mifflin on Friday nights this fall. So this week, though, against Wilson, who are we not going to see? A couple of people that Mifflin has lost due to graduation. A lot of familiar names that we heard often last year during the game and throughout the season. You know, quarterback and defensive back Cam Wolf, running back and linebacker Isaac Ross, running back and defensive back Jordan Copeland, receiver defensive back Tyshawn Weaver, a couple offensive defensive linemen and Brandon Allen, Casey Clark, Chase Yoder, Ben Gates, and one that I definitely remember seeing all over the field during our game last year was Niles Tanis. And last, but certainly not least, especially from what he was able to do as punter and kicker for them, was Ben Myers. Was solid for them the last few years. None of them with the Mustangs anymore. So who will they have? Well, they're a lot like Wilson. 3, 4, 5 guys back, depending on how you count it. So they do have a relatively inexperienced team in terms of starts, but there are some key contributors back for sure. You can't overlook a bunch of seniors in Bryce Stubler, Michael Franks, and then along the offensive line, and when you have 3 linemen back, that's usually a pretty good sign.
Yes.
Cooper Henry, Jordan Espinosa, and Sam Miller. Now, Stubler is kind of one of their halfbacks, but he was supposed to be possibly taking snaps at quarterback. I do not believe that happened in their first game, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen Friday night at Gursky.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys play on defense as well, so they're closer to having a lot of that defensive back for this season. They have 6 contributors back: Miller, Henry, Espinosa, Franks, and Stubler going both ways, and also Jacob Gelvin at linebacker as a key contributor returning for the Mustangs. So how does it look, Wilson Mifflin? Well, obviously these teams have met each other a lot. In terms of Mifflin-Wilson, I believe this will be the 61st meeting. If you include Shillington in that, it's even more. I think we might be close to or in the 70s. So plenty of matchups between the Mustangs and what we are now known as the Bulldogs. Of course, that wasn't always the case. And I don't actually know what Shillington was now off the top of my head.
Not sure.
I'm sure someone knows, and I know
my grandfather went to Shillington.
From all the research that I've done and all the clipping, I should know because I've read those old team names. Like West Reading was a team, the West Reading Cowboys. Interesting enough, but no, I don't remember what Shillington was called. Was it actually might have? Was it the Schoolboys? Might have been Shillington Schoolboys.
I don't know.
Maybe that's just something that they wrote in the paper a lot. They always called them the Schoolboys. if you ever have a chance to go back and read the newspaper clippings from the 40s and 50s, they're quite a hoot. You should check them out. They're interesting. But speaking of 2018 here, Wilson and Mifflin are kind of on the same course. It's too bad they're not in the same league anymore, although we do get kind of that protective rivalry.
Or the same division in District 3. So
right, that changed
they had
in
been different leagues, but at least they were the same classification, but now they're separated in both of those.
Speed Boys, not School Boys. It might have been Speed Boys.
I don't know. I cannot confirm for you. You could say
this
a
is just kind of
wrong
me.
answers.
I'm just kind of thinking. I'm scanning these old articles that I've been reading over the last 6 months, and I can't remember. But yeah, so Mifflin's been dominating what was the old Intercounty League, the Berks. What do they call it? Berks Section 1. They've had a lot of playoff success. They just haven't been able to grab that district title that's been invading them. And we mentioned
5A is no joke.
No, not at all. They won the matchup with Wilson last year in 2017.
Yeah.
So,
and beat the team that was regarded as the best team in the state.
Yeah,
by
they
far.
upset Harrisburg.
Everyone penciled in Harrisburg as state champions
at
last
Harrisburg
summer,
too,
and they beat them at Harrisburg. Yeah,
that was a shocker. Yeah, and they were within a point of winning the title. Was it a point?
Yeah, they lost Manheim Central, right?
Yeah. Who I think was beating Gateway. In their playoff game. Yeah,
so that was a really strong Mifflin team last year.
Yeah.
Like you said, they lost some of the key guys, but they return a lot. And while there is a coaching change, it's not your typical coaching change because the guy not only has been with the program for 3 decades, right around there, but he was also had his head coach experience a couple years ago when they were had a really successful season. So, while it may look like there's a lot of differences, coming over from Shillington, that's not the case.
No.
This is your typical Mifflin team that's going to be really good and ready to go for the Wilson game.
Yeah, with 3+ starters back on the offensive line, who I think, if not all 3 of them, I think 2 of them have started since they were sophomores. You got to think their strength is going to be up front or in the trenches. And with the type of offense
they like to do.
Yeah, with the offense they run, you kind of need that. So they do have a nice selection of the skill guys back, though, and we've all been hearing about freshman running back Nick Singleton, who we saw firsthand last year as an 8th grader. It was not a fun experience for our Wilson West football team.
Lots of him running away.
Yeah, lots of him going off into the distance. So he's getting varsity time now with Mifflin as a freshman.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but they need a quarterback and a running back to step up at that fullback position. Those the 2 most important positions for Mifflin on offense. People would probably point to the offensive line, but you need someone to orchestrate that, and you've got to have a competent quarterback and fullback combo to really get their offense clicking. They haven't been able to find that yet, but like we said about Wilson, sometimes you need that week.
Right.
And we've seen Mifflin do this how many times? Wilson beats them in week 1, and then all of a sudden they win 10 games in a row. So hopefully not this year.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll 0-2, and then they can win. Well, they can win as many games as they want. So, they had a little bit of an issue on Friday night, just like Wilson did. They went to Cedar Cliff, and they got shut out, 30-0. Big surprise. When I saw the update, I think at the time they were down 23-0. I was shocked to see it because I expected some big things from Mifflin this year. Not that they can't still do it, but it was just an eye opener.
Right.
To see them down 23-0 and eventually lose 30-0.
Right. If you would have, if I would have seen the scores coming across and see that they're down, I'd be like, okay, because I know nothing about Cedar Cliff really.
Right.
You know what I mean? But to be down 23-0 and to lose 30-0, that catches your attention.
They had some turnover problems like Wilson did. I believe they fumbled or threw an interception inside the red zone.
And we saw firsthand what can happen. It can be one of those things where early on a couple things just don't bounce your way, and next thing you know, you find yourself down and you find yourself in an unfamiliar position. Now you've got to do things that you wouldn't typically do, and that you just find yourself kind of behind the 8 ball and in trouble in those week 1 games.
The bread and butter of a Governor Mifflin team is their rushing offense, and while we thought Wilson's 2.1 yard per carry average was bad, Mifflin wasn't even able to get to 1.75 yards per carry. They got, now I'm sure this, again, the quarterback rushes and sacks are bringing this down a notch too, but they had 31 carries, they only gained 54 net rushing yards, and they had none of their backs, fullback or any of the slot wings, going over 24 yards. So they had issues there with their main component of their offensive attack was not clicking Friday night. They also couldn't stop the Cedar Cliff quarterback. They gave up 257 yards through the air, and all 4 touchdowns were scored in that manner. And we didn't see a rotation at quarterback, at least not statistically. Senior Colby Reeser assumed the duties, and he went 6 for 15 for 92 yards and an interception. And Bryce Stubler is kind of supposed to be maybe the guy, if they're not settled at the running back, the fullback position, the one to step up was going to be Stubler. Well, he only had 1 rushing attempt and 2 receptions. So Cedar Cliff was able to hold him in check. So the analysis and expectations of the Wilson-Mifflin game, both teams are kind of in shock right now, sitting at 0-1, and kind of both being dominated in their opener. It was kind of a slow burn for Wilson, and things got on top of Mifflin quickly as well. But I'd expect another tough, close game. Both teams are going to be clawing, hoping not to get into an 0-2 hole. This would be the first time in a long time for Wilson to be 0-2, and I believe we may have touched on this last year after the opening week loss to Mifflin, and knowing was on the schedule with Springford and Central Dauphin. We're looking at Wilson's history and what season could we compare it to. Well, the last time Wilson started 0-2 was 1993, if you can believe that. 25 years ago, the last time a Wilson team started 0-2. And Mifflin, it's a little bit more recent, but it doesn't happen all that often. They actually did it back in 2012, losing to Wilson, then losing to Lancaster Catholic. But if you remember correctly, Wilson beat Mifflin again that season in the district semifinals to go to the district championship game. So Mifflin had a pretty darn good year after starting 0-2.
Well, and that was right in those times when Lancaster Catholic was,
dominating with
winning
Roman
state championships and
that's
things
Roman
like
Clay,
yeah.
Lancaster Catholic team.
So that was powerhouse Lancaster Catholic, So that was a brutal first 2 weeks.
Yeah, and they rebounded and Wilson beat them 21-0 in the opener that year, and then in the district semifinal, also at Gursky, Wilson beat Mifflin 21-14. Yeah. And Wilson went on to play Harrisburg in the district championship, and Wilson won the district title that year. Mifflin also started 0-2 back in 2004. So you see, it's not something that each team is used to happening. So one of them will be in that hole this year. We'll find out on Friday night. Again, I mentioned Wilson-Mifflin. This is the 61st meeting, not counting when Mifflin was Shillington. If you look at the last 20 games and the recent history of this series, it's mostly been Wilson. We know last year Mifflin was able to get the Gursky Lynn Trophy for the first time, but prior to that, Wilson had won 6 in a row, dating back to that 2012 season. They had won 9 out of 10, dating back to 2008. So recent history, it was all Wilson. But there was a time where you kind of got the Governor Mifflin renaissance was back when the Wilson-Mifflin rivalry resumed after a 2-year hiatus in 2006. That year, Mifflin beat Wilson twice, including in the District 3 semifinal, and then opened the 07 season with a victory. So Coach Doms actually lost his first 3 games against Mifflin as head coach, which I'm sure that didn't sit well with a lot of people.
I'm sure.
Actually, I think we heard when we were talking about this preview off the air that people were saying maybe he's not the guy for the job.
Yeah.
After the 06 and 07 seasons.
Yeah, the Wilson-Mifflin game brings out some intense...
Oh, it absolutely does.
Some intense feelings, lots of different ways.
Before that 2-year split, Wilson had dominated during the Chad Henney era, winning every single year that Henney was on the Wilson team, 03, 02, 01, and 2000, and they actually got worse every year for Mifflin. The closest was Henney's Henney's freshman year, my sophomore year, in 2000. Wilson won 28-7. The next year, Wilson won 41-6. My senior year, Wilson won 43-0. And then Henney's senior year, Wilson won 60-13. And that was actually Chad's last game, as Wilson didn't qualify for the playoffs that year. There was a 2-year gap earlier in 98 and 99. Wilson-Mifflin didn't play. But then the other 2 matchups were of note because I remember going to the 1996 game where Wilson was the leader of the pack, expected to do huge things, and they did. But Mifflin got the better of them, 28-7. I remember being in Chillington for that game and watching that. I believe that was John Gilmore's senior year. I think that was John Gilmore's senior year at Wilson. So I remember being at that game. And then Wilson got him back the next year, winning 49-14. So of the last 20 games in the series, Wilson has won 14 of them. So not too shabby. I'd like to say 15 of the last 21, though. That would be ideal.
That would be a very nice way to be able to kind of talk about that, tie into next week's show.
Absolutely. So I think that's it. Do you have anything else to say about Wilson Mifflin?
No, it's just, a lot of things we said about Wilson, where it clearly didn't go your way week one, but kind of across the board, there's room for improvement. There were flashes of things that I liked on Friday night. It's just they weren't able to sustain it. So, you and I both know they're working hard this week to get it done and to kind of get back to where they need to be. And they've got a great opportunity this Friday at home, hosting Governor Mifflin. At the same time, you got to be careful because Mifflin's in that spot too. Mifflin wants to show that they're going to improve from week 1 to week 2, and that they have a lot to prove. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. You're going to have two teams that want it pretty bad, as if this game it doesn't ever need any kind of extra influence. Next thing you have teams fighting to kind of get their season back on track real early. So
yeah, for sure. So come out early to Gursky Stadium this Friday night, August 31st, for the Wilson Mifflin football game. There will be whiteout shirts and tickets sold this week at the high school. I don't know if it'll be the main office building or the athletic office or in the gymnasium, but make sure you visit wilsonsd.org for information on that. And as soon as I get that information, I will post it on the Wilson Bulldogs football Facebook page. All right, I think we're pretty much here at the end of episode 4-6. We mentioned that a couple coaches approaching milestones, the biggest being defensive coordinator, outside linebackers coach Ernie Wolver. He needs 13 wins to get to 200. And Wilson's now played 790 games in program history. And, depending on how the season goes, we could see 800 happen this season. So that would be an interesting milestone as Wilson prepares for their 75th season in 2019.
Yeah.
All right, make sure you are liking, following, sharing, subscribing, visiting a whole plethora of sites and accounts, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the website, all those good things. Most of the accounts are under @Wilson Bulldogs or @Wilson Bulldogs Football. You can follow Justin @Mr_Raffoff or me @Coach Joe Mays for our Wilson stuff. Follow the Bulldog Hour, like the Bulldog Hour on all of those platforms as well. Again, I'll still have live game updates and photos on Twitter. Hopefully we'll get to have some interviews after the Mifflin game this Friday night for the show next week.
That would be fun.
And again, the game will be broadcast on the accounts, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. You can watch the Wilson Mifflin game if you're unable to get the Gursky. If you're able to get the Gursky, definitely do so because I think it'll be a great, great atmosphere for the first home game of this season. Anything else to add?
No.
All right. I think that about wraps it up here. So we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Bulldog Hour. For Justin Raffoff and the Wilson football program, I'm Joe Mays. And remember, go Bulldogs.
To the Bulldog Hour. Want more Wilson football? Follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. Or visit www.bulldoghour.com. The Bulldog Hour is a featured program on jmnjrradio.com.